Welcome to the Inside Housing Podcast, where we break down the housing process, real estate, and investing. Here we go. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Hi, Rennick. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. The first thing I have to say is happy birthday.
Thank you.
I feel very special.
Thank you for having me.
So this is the first episode I'm doing since I did a slight rebrand.
Yeah, I saw that. Looks good.
Well, it made sense because I had the podcast. I kind of call it my first season, and it was Inside Housing Podcast, and we were talking all things, but it really is a Vermont podcast. So I figured making the name Inside Housing Vermont just seemed more fitting. So thanks for being the first guest on since I did
My pleasure.
that. All right. So with you are one of the best agents in the state, and you've been so for a little while now. And you have tons of experience. And I want to start, you are the principal broker of our firm. So what is exactly the responsibilities, duties of a principal broker versus just a regular broker?
So a principal broker is responsible for the actions of all the agents in the company, whether it's my office in Waterbury, where I'm based out of, or South Burlington, or Virgins, or Middlebury. If there's any problems with the transaction, with a client or another agent, I get involved. It's on my license as well, so it's all attached to my license. It's a lot of responsibility. Fortunately, we've been able to stay out of any kind of major problems, thank goodness, the whole time I've been doing this, I'm very grateful for that. But I think that's a testament to this company and the training and the support that we have.
So overseeing all the agents, it falls on you, essentially, your license, if anything goes wrong with transaction.
I just get pulled right into it. Yeah.
Okay. And that has to do with that provision where if there's an issue or something occurs, we have to go to arbitration.
Well, we would try to settle problems before that, but that would be the first step. After, if we're unable to work things out, then that would be the next step.
Okay.
And
do you
then
enjoy it?
Hopefully not litigation.
Yes, hopefully.
Beyond that. I do enjoy it. Like I said, there's a lot of risk involved with that position, but we've been able to work through everything so far. And I like supporting the agents, and I like troubleshooting and bringing some ideas to agents that they hadn't thought of to help solve problems. I think that's my major role in doing that, is to maybe just come up with some other options for how to deal with any kind of problems people have with their clients or with other agents or with a transaction.
So as you've been developing throughout your career, you don't start out and realize, hey, I'm going to be training new agents. What is the thing you enjoy the most about doing that?
About the training?
Because one of the things that anybody who's worked with you on a transaction, buy, sell, side, doesn't matter, is you have a high standard. And you're very thorough at the documentation and doing it, really, I call it the right way. Mm-hmm. So have you been able to just really cement inside of yourself, this is the way that real estate should be done?
I think there are many ways in which it can be done, and I try not to be quite so rigid, but there are certain details that need to happen that I like to educate our new agents about in regard to how to fill out forms properly, which forms to use, how to have a full and complete offer prepared, how to prepare all of your listing documents and make sure that you have everything. You have to pay attention to the details. I like to make sure that the new agents that are coming in are really well prepared in that department. And it's not something they're just going to remember the minute they sit down and start listening to me over the course of 5 or 6 weeks. It's something that we sort of start to plant in their minds, this sort of focus on attention to detail as you're going through the forms, the transactions, all the steps that you have, and making sure they understand that they can always come back to me anytime throughout the course of their first few transactions if they have any questions, and just to be support for them at any time. And that's the other big part of my role. And I talk to new agents all the time. And they know they can call me anytime. How do we write this addendum? Or how do I work on this listing, et cetera?
So in your experience, what makes a good real estate agent?
I think people need to understand a bunch of things before they get into this industry and examine if they're the right fit for it beforehand. I think that's really important. So let's start there. So this is not like a regular job where you go to work 9 to 5 and you have somebody telling you what to do. and you have tasks and activities and you have goals that somebody else sets for you, whether it be a daily list of projects or activities you need to complete, or weekly or monthly or annually. You are your own boss. You're working for yourself. And so you have to look at it as an independent contractor. You are running your own business. So are you prepared to run your own business? Are you prepared to make a commitment to yourself and to your family? Are you prepared to set goals? Are you prepared to follow through on those goals? Do you have the time? Do you have the financial situation where you can do that? There's a lot of questions you need to ask yourself before you enter into this industry.
So then how would somebody gauge those things?
Yeah. I don't see this as something that is easy to do part-time. So the first thing to determine is, can I throw myself into this full bore, 100%? Or am I going to be doing this while I'm carrying another job or 2 other jobs? Do I have 2 years of financial support set up before I start this position? It can take that long to even start having some closings. I think people don't realize that.
So how would you explain that? Because I've seen that, right? And a lot of people do have to, for financial reasons, sort of have a bridge. Whether that bridge is a spouse who is working, or the bridge is some other sort of financial income, or a lot of times people come into the career when they're retired, but you need some sort of a bridge. But when you're starting, it also feels like you don't have anything to do. And there's this sort of push-pull there.
Coming up with a business plan right out of the gate of what kind of business do I want to do? How much business do I want to do? When do I want to complete that by? How many transactions do I want to try to close? And work backwards from there and figure out at a very detailed level what your activities are going to be each day, and kind of have the grit and determination to stick with that. And this is where people fall apart. I think that we as a company give agents all the tools and ideas to build that business plan and break it down to a daily list, an hourly list, a daily schedule. Real estate is something where you only get paid when you close on a house. End of story. There is no other way that you're going to earn an income in this business. You can't wait for people to give you business. It will not fall into your lap. You have to generate it yourself. So you need to know that going into this. And there are certain activities that you can do to help generate leads. You need to know what those are. You need to know how many of those you're going to do every single day. And you have to have a written plan.
It's very important.
And you need to be willing to fail at those things over and over again. You face a lot of rejection in this business. And you have to pick yourself up and keep going, no matter how much that happens. And that's really hard.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I've heard that before, that real estate agents, they become good at a lot of other things that they may do because we're used to constantly failing in it. Every time you go to a for sale by owner and you're like, hey, I want this business, or whatever you're trying to do, you're failing. And so being able to overcome that on a constant basis.
And you do develop the skill to do that. You talk to a seller 5, 6, 7, or 8 times. 6 or 7 of those times you're going to be rejected. And maybe that 8th time they're willing to talk to you. And now what happens when you do have that little bit of success at the end of that? 2 or 3 months that you're trying to speak with someone and see if they'll let you into their home. That feels really, really good. And that's confidence building. And when that starts to happen and you start to see some success from that hard work that you put into it, that's when you start to feel like, okay, maybe I'm going to be able to make it in this. But the reality is that about 80% of agents fail after the first year and quit.
I think I've seen the stats.
And I think it's 87% after the first 5 years.
Yeah, it's in the 80s that they had a license and they just get out of the business. And I think nationwide, not even a Vermont thing, 50% of the agents have 0-1 transaction. So you do the math in Vermont, and we have 2,000 licensed agents. Half of those are having no transactions.
So I think nationwide, the top 10% of realtors do 90% of the business. I think off the top of my head. So if you do the math, 90% of agents are doing 10% of the business. So break that down. And who do you want to be? Which group of people do you want to be in?
So now we're kind of moving along and you've decided, you figured it out. You're like, yes, I actually want to do this. Realize that I got to do sets of activities. Those activities drive your business. Once you start to get the business, a lot of it has to do with how well you do at handling them. So what are the things that make a person able to do that once they have the business in front of them? Does that make sense as a question?
It takes a lot of motivation to follow through on those things. And I think the motivation comes from both external forces and internal forces. And I think it takes the right blend of a person to be able to do all of those things. There's financial pressure to be successful in this. And there's those who feel like, I can't fail. I can't afford to fail at this. I have to do whatever it takes. And internal forces that people have as far as their sort of competitive nature, not even with others, but with themselves. I do not want to fail at this. It's like an athlete. And their super high level of intensity in what they do and holding themselves to a certain standard and meeting goals. It's a certain personality that will get through this and survive it. And many won't. We see people come in that maybe the financial piece isn't there. They just don't have that kind of pressure. That's pretty scary pressure to have on you when you're trying to support a family and feed people and keep a roof over your head, whatever it may be. People will do anything to protect themselves and their family. When they're in that kind of situation, they know that they have to do it. So that's a big part of it. And it's helpful. You almost need that kind of motivation and that kind of boost to, I know that I can't afford to fail at this. But it's also support and training from your mentor or from your broker and making sure that you know exactly what the things are that you need to do. And that's where we come in to play. And there's many things that we teach agents to do to help generate business. There's tons of different ways to do it. And staying organized and detailed on what those are going to be and just do it. It's like what Robbie says. She's
happen.
Exactly right. And people come up with every excuse in the book. That's hard for me to hear. That's hard for me to see. We've all gone through all kinds of challenges, some harder than others. But those who find an excuse to not do things are going to be in that 90%, I'm afraid. Remember we went to that presentation at convention last year and that the presenter was talking about the study that she did about the top 6, she called it this. She did a huge study on this group of people who set goals for themselves. And it wasn't necessarily real estate goals. A lot of it was fitness or health goals or something like that. And she studied them for this long period of time. And she discovered, really came down to 6% of those people actually followed through on those goals that they set for themselves. And I think we're tracking right along with that. So there's something in human nature that is leading us down that track.
I don't think people realize that being in real estate is a little bit like being an entrepreneur. You have to make the business, right? And right. You get help and you get guides and you really hope you're in the right place to have it, but you have to do the things on your list, right?
And you have to have pride in your business. How does it feel to run your own business, to have your own company? You're your own CEO. You're paying all your own expenses. You're paying your quarterly estimated taxes. And it's the same thing as any kind of other business. It really is. And having a certain pride in your business and how you organize it and what different tools you use for that, you've got to feel good about it.
So what are kind of the broad steps of walking through training? What is it that you need to know to be able to actually go out and handle a transaction?
You need to know what is required of you legally as far as disclosures, as far as written contracts, what your obligations are as a realtor to your client. Are they a client or are they a customer, and knowing the difference?
So one of the forms that should be given to everybody is the mandatory disclosure. And that's explaining that difference between client and customer. And I think right off the bat, not everybody even does that.
And that's required by law. It's a Vermont form and it's a Vermont requirement that we make sure that everyone we work with understands who we are working for at all times. And in Vermont, you have to be representing someone at all times. You're either working for your buyer as a client through a written contract. And that's the only way that you can represent a buyer is through a written contract. You can't do it by just telling them that you're representing them.
You can't just be like,
hey, do you want to be my client? Okay, I can start advising you on this home that we've just looked at. You need to have a written agreement in order to engage in any kind of advice or counsel to the buyer outside of material facts that you are required to know about the property or that you're required to present. One way to look at it is you're working for a client and you're working with a customer. And a customer, you have certain obligations to a customer as well, different from client obligations, which takes it to a whole different level.
so does that mean that if somebody clicks on a link or they know someone, they say, hey, go show me this house, and there's no written agreement, then that agent is working on behalf of the sellers?
They're working on behalf of the listing agency. And in Vermont, we do allow that. It's called broker agency. So long as the listing agent cooperates with or engages in broker agency, you can show the property to the buyer as a customer, and you are representing the interests of the listing agency and ultimately the seller.
I've experienced this and I've seen this, that a lot of people are hesitant to enter into an agreement with an agent just to see a house if they don't know them. So how do you advise a new agent on dealing with that?
Right. One way to handle that is if it's a new relationship and you're just starting to feel each other out and see if this is going to be a good fit for both of you, and someone wants to see a property, you can do an agreement that's just specific to that one property. So let's say you're going out to see one or two homes in that afternoon. You can do an agreement that is specific to those two listings and excludes anything else that you may look at in the future with them. And that gives you a chance to just, hey, let's try this out. Let's see how this goes today. And you're able to offer them guidance around that property right out of the gate. Otherwise, you're not. Advice on price, negotiations, confidentiality, information that they share with you that you cannot share with the other side of the transaction with the listing agent. Those things are confidential. That's a client level relationship. That's client level services that you're providing at that point. Again, you can only do that through a written agreement. So you can do it that way for starters. If you've now spent several months working with that buyer and you've really developed a good relationship and good rapport, and they know that they can trust you to be honest and hardworking and dedicated to them, it can certainly roll and move over into a blanket agreement that covers everything that you look at. So it can transition from one to the other. And they're going to want to work with you. They're going to see that it's a benefit to them to work with you, and they develop loyalty to you. And they don't want to look at properties with anyone else. That's the kind of relationship that you're looking for from a buyer. So hopefully it moves in that direction.
And the agent needs to be prepared, right? They need to be able to know what they're bringing and how they're going to help service that client based on the needs that they have. And I've heard this from people thinking about getting in real estate is they're like, I don't know a lot about houses. And I try to explain to them, I said, it's not just that. What you're bringing is a whole slew of things that will help prepare the client or the customer to move in the transaction. So where does the house knowledge piece fit in terms?
That's just really kind of a small part of the whole thing. And people often say to me, oh, it must be so fun to be a realtor. You get to go look at all these nice houses. After a while, you realize that's just the smallest part of what we do. After a while, you're just, I don't ever need to see another house again. That becomes the least important part of your job in a way. It's the information about the house that you're bringing to the client that they need to notice. The kinds of issues you see with the house that you want to bring to their attention. And honesty is really important. When I tell the agents that I'm training, I've just as often told folks this is not probably a good house for you based on what you've explained to me you're looking for, just as often as I have encouraged a buyer that this would be a great house for you. You have to do just as much of that as anything else. And whether it be not the location that is best for them, you never make a decision for your client, no matter what. But to advise based on the information that they've given you, to bring facts to their attention. The house, the roof needs replacing, you're near a busy road, you have kids, you have pets. These are the issues that might come up with this property. To make sure to be very honest and open with them. And that develops the trust which is so important.
So it's also like being able to say no.
Exactly.
And I've heard this before where people say, find an agent who's also willing to tell you, no, this is not the right one.
That's a part of it. And also making sure that they're protected. So your job is to protect your client.
By protect.
Through the legal documents that we use, so they understand when they're writing an offer what the contingencies are available to them, and that they need to know what they all are. And your job is to explain to them, here are all the ways in which you can terminate this contract. And here is the timeline in which you will need to terminate based on any of these contingencies. Making them aware of every option that they have, from inspections to appraisal to financing, and the timeline that's set for all those contingencies, and to make sure you're meeting those timelines. So your job is to then, once you get under contract, that's when the hard part starts.
And that is so true, because finding the home and identifying it, whether you're on the buy side or if you're on the sell side and you're trying to move the property, that is one piece. But it seems like a bulk of the work happens in really two phases, which is one, the contract itself, which is super important, and then once it's under contract. So what are some of the things that people are getting wrong? Because the lack of, and I don't think it's an experience thing, I think it's an education thing, which is knowing how to write good contracts.
Yeah, I think the hardest part of real estate is going from contract to closing. That's when things fall apart. That's when a home inspection can fail. That's when the financing can not come through. That's when appraisal issues come up. There's lead paint. There's the mandatory flood disclosure. There's the seller's property information report. All of these documents should be provided. And if they're not provided, you need to obtain those for your client, for buyer client. You need to have a seller client. Make sure that they're providing all these documents to the buyer. It protects everybody. The more disclosure, the better. And there's little details that we all forget at times. And that's where things fall apart. I had a manager once tell me, the devil's in the detail. And that's where you just want to kick yourself in the pants. It happens to everybody. And don't beat yourself up. But this is what I'm trying to do to protect agents from having that happen. And making sure that in their first few transactions, they've got somebody with them every step of the way, reviewing everything that they're writing, making corrections, making sure that their timelines seem reasonable, making sure they've got all the disclosures, making sure they've got every field on your purchase and sale documents filled out properly, and that they've given their buyer every opportunity to know what could go wrong through the course of the transaction, what is available to them for different types of inspections. They need to know it all. And if you've missed any of that and something comes up,
that's when you find out.
That's when you get that sort of sick feeling in your stomach that we've all experienced before.
We have. And so does that tie into the whole, what's the value of a realtor? Because real estate has undergone a lot of changes ever since the settlement. Even though I think Vermont has always done things correctly for a long time, there's this notion out there that, oh, I don't need a realtor, or I can do it myself, or why would I pay somebody thousands of dollars that's out of my pocket, which is how people think about it. How do you explain the value of being a realtor, especially in 2026?
Protection, saving heartache, saving money, saving the transaction, troubleshooting. The expertise that we have as a company and the however many hundreds of years of experience we have as a group will make the process of purchasing or selling a home, which is one of the biggest things we ever do in our lives, successful. So it's the difference between having a successful transaction, a smooth transaction, an enjoyable transaction versus potential real disasters that can happen because you're not a trained professional in selling real estate. Just like we're not eye doctors or dentists or surgeons. Would we do those things ourselves? It's really quite similar. And to have a transaction fall apart is such a heartbreak for both sides. And our job is to prevent that from happening. So there is tremendous value in having a professional involved. And I would say on both sides of the transaction, not just on the buy side, not just on the sale side. When two realtors are cooperating together with the buyer and seller clients to bring together a transaction to closing is a beautiful thing. I've seen it, and it can be really appreciated by the parties. We know that. They come back to us again and again and again, and they wouldn't work with anyone else. The knowledge, the experience, knowing how to protect our clients is really, really important.
So there's the value. And it's interesting because a lot of people now are saying they want to work with a realtor. When it comes to how we get paid and the commissions and it being a percentage of the sale, if we shift for a second and we're talking to sellers, how do you have that conversation, not necessarily about what the percentage is, but to the degree that sellers sometimes think that they're giving away money that they would otherwise keep? How do you navigate that one? Especially give that to newer agents who don't have the 20 years to kind of fall back on, say, oh, I've seen this before.
Our job is to sell the property for the highest amount and at the best terms for our seller client. And we firmly believe that hiring us to do that job will be a financial benefit to them. And that's the message that we need to get across. Even with our fee built in, it's still going to be a financial benefit to them. With the exposure that we give the property, with the marketing that we do, with the networking that we do in order to bring in the qualified buyers, the pricing strategy is so important for a seller, especially we're into a transitioning market right now. And offering guidance around pricing, both to buyers and sellers, is a game changer, I think, right now. And not just a price, but a strategy. How do you want to be positioned in the market with all the competition that's out there? Here are all the competing listings in your marketplace. How do you want to be positioned with those listings? Bringing them the market data. We put the time and energy and hard work into that so they don't have to. And we bring it to them and we advise based on market data and we provide ranges. We never give a specific number, but we say on how quickly you want the sale to happen, here's a price range that we would recommend. And hitting the mark with that is the difference between a good experience and a bad experience for a seller. And we've all been on both sides of that. So that's a big, big part of what we do. And our experience isn't just looking up data. We've been out looking at all of these homes. So we really know not just numbers, but how does this home compare to that home as far as how it's been maintained, how it presents. We're professionals at presenting property, to prepare a property for sale. So huge. And we are doing more and more of that, staging and professional photos and virtual staging. I don't think anybody does that as well as realtors do that. And just from our experience of what is selling, what works. And we know now, we are seeing that the homes that sell at or above list price quickly with potential competing offers are the ones that have been the most well-maintained, that have had the updates done, that have had regular maintenance done, that present well as far as the decor of the home. And we need to be able to go into a home and not be afraid to help the seller get it there.
Yeah, so that's a big thing, is that ability and the confidence factor to go in and tell someone hard things. I would recommend that you do this, or this would be a strategy that I'm going to bring, because we know and we see it, right? In my position, I see hundreds of transactions come through, and I can tell who's doing a good job of conveying that value. This is how it's going to work. On the other side of that, we're in a weird world where there's a lot of, I don't want to say bad agents, but there's other people who just go as far as just doing whatever it takes to get the business. And so how do you see that in the long term?
I mean, they would just take any listing and sort of.
I also look at it in the sense that to be successful in the short term is one strategy, right? But every agent, regardless of who they work for, that I see enduring over time, making a career out of this, as opposed to treating it like a job for a short period of time, they all seem to be able to say no and say hard things. And I think that people should evaluate that when they're working with someone. Is that kind of how it's been?
I think it's those who are willing to go in with confidence with their advice to sellers and buyers, not in a way that's insulting or condescending, but that's honest in a way that they understand the reason you're saying these things is to help them, not to hurt them. And that if you're able to follow their guidance on how to properly present your home, that it will result in a better sale, a faster sale, a higher price sale. And the agents that are willing to do that, I know we have some in the company that are just really direct. And they've gotten the confidence to be able to do that because they've seen the success and how that works. And how their clients say, wow, thanks for being honest with us. We needed that. We've had 3 other agents in here who've completely rolled over. If you think the house needs to be vacant to list it, we can make that happen. It's an important quality to have.
So you've done this for a couple years. What would you say are bad agents? And I don't mind saying it out loud because I think that I know so many great agents inside and outside of the company. And I know a lot that I would personally not want to work with. And so the question is, if there's all these things that make you good at it, what makes you bad at this?
Well, I think in any business, following through and doing what you say you're going to do, delivering, over-deliver, communication is so important. And having a communication plan with your client. As soon as you go dark, you have a listing, it's not selling, you're not having any activity. It's an uncomfortable place to be. And when you go dark on your seller and they're not hearing from you for weeks and weeks, versus an agent who is still calling every Friday afternoon to check in, even if it's bad news. We have had only 3 folks check out your listing this past week. We've had no offers. Here's the feedback we've gotten, and it hasn't been great feedback. And I want to really be clear that I think we need to start discussing the next steps. But just regular communication, no matter what the communication has to be, is appreciated. And a seller is much less likely to just walk away from you if they haven't heard from you for 2 or 3 months, which this is what happens. Agents give up on their own listings. They just give up. I can't sell this. I can't get through to my seller. If you're having problems with a listing and you're struggling week after week or month after month, and you have stayed in constant communication with your seller, you've continued to do the marketing that you've promised to do, they're much less likely to walk away from you. They want to see you be successful because they appreciate the effort that you've put into it. If they're not seeing any effort and you've given up on them, they will give up on you.
That's really good advice. So what keeps an agent staying in this business? Because I've seen sort of agent burnout, and there's a flurry of things that you're doing in the beginning to try to make it work. Things are very different now. We see a lot of online activity and having to market yourself and promote yourself. And I look at that as it's always been like that. It's just taken on a new form in terms of, and I think it was you who told me that if people don't know you do this thing, how can they know that they should work with you? And that's taken on a whole new life, especially with social media and all that stuff. But what keeps someone able to stay with it over time, right? Think of the agents 10, 15 years doing this.
Success, for one thing, obviously. There are ups and downs throughout the course of the year, every year. Finally, after enough years, I finally started to trust in that. It's been 25 years now. And every year has a cycle to it. Come November, December, or February, March, it's slow. And you're saying, what is going on? Oh my goodness. I began to trust that it was going to come back. And it wasn't just me. It wasn't that I wasn't doing enough. This is a natural cycle of real estate, and it's okay. It's okay to have those slower times if you're prepared and you've had good cycle throughout the year with other times of year, and you're ending up in this quiet cycle. It's okay. You need to learn to trust that it's not the end of the world. And this is when you can really kick things into high gear with different types of marketing activities. The problem is people do those things when it's slow and they stop doing those things when they're busy. So maintaining your marketing strategies constantly throughout the year will continue to provide that book of business on a more even basis throughout the course of the year versus the highs ups and the low lows and the high highs. So knowing what those things are going to be and never stopping those, never giving up on those tasks and strategies that you've built throughout the course of the year.
And because you as a realtor, what keeps you going through that? So you have your plan, you stick to it, you understand the cycles. So what's been some of the most enjoyable parts about you doing it and helping people?
Well, it's amazing to have the phone start to ring again when things are picking up and you've been worried, and then, oh, everyone's starting to now think about listing their house. The phone starts to ring. It's past clients, it's referrals from past clients, it's friends, it's everybody who knows that you're the one that they need to contact. It's a great feeling when business starts to come to you naturally, just from your past experiences and your past successes. And it does happen. And it takes some patience to get there. But when someone out of the blue calls you because someone told them to call you, it's a really nice feeling that someone had the confidence in you to do that. To have a close friend of theirs reach out to you for help is probably one of the nicest things that you can have as a realtor.
There's been sort of like a shift in the kinds of realtors. A lot of ones who've done it for a long time have been in and out. What do you think going forward, if you just had to look forward, new ones would really need to internalize to do this? Because AI has changed things so much, right? It's put information at people's fingertips in a way that has just happened so fast. A buyer or a seller now, sometimes they're having conversations with you and they know a lot that I didn't even see 4 or 5 years ago. So but the core things we're still doing, right? Which is negotiation, contracts, which is dealing with people and their emotions, and the fact that buying or selling a house is sometimes the most emotionally charged decision that people are making. So what's the thing to internalize as you step into a very heavy AI information dense environment, but the core thing still needs to stay the same?
Well, it's interesting that realtors or real estate agents are still so widely used, even after all of this technology that has come about, higher than ever.
Yep.
So it tells me that this is a people business. This is a relationship business. And when you're doing one of the hardest things you're ever going to do in your life, to have someone there to talk to who will show up, who's a human being, who can listen to you, can advise you, be your therapist, whatever you need to do.
We wear a lot of hats.
We've been there. I don't think it's going to go away. And I think that may be old-fashioned, but I think we're going to go even back to that more and more and start to return to that. One of the things that works the best for me is a handwritten note. I mean, who does that anymore? Who takes the time to sit down and write a thank you note by hand to a seller for having you over to their home? You have a listing appointment. You know it's a competitive situation. There were 3 or 4 agents there that they were interviewing. You're the one that wrote a handwritten thank you note for having you over, and it's genuine and it's real. Those kinds of activities, I think, stand out now because we're missing that so much in our lives, that personal touch.
Yeah, it's a human connection to be able to, like you said, I think availability is the one thing that I've seen across agents is you pick up the phone and you call them and they answer. And then on just like a consumer side, I once worked with an agent and I couldn't get a hold of it, and it drove me insane. I think that's going to be forever.
I do too.
And one thing that people always don't quite see is we're in this interesting business where we compete and collaborate with each other constantly. What's been your take on that over the years?
You mean with other realtors during the course of outside of our company?
Well, because yes, we compete with one another for business to an extent, but then we have to constantly shift gears, put on a hat, and then immediately
and work with them.
And work with them.
With them, yeah.
So what's important about working with other agents?
Yeah, I think some of the most successful realtors are the ones that do have the good relationships with other realtors. And one of the things that I try to teach is that when you're showing someone's property, someone else's listing, that's the very beginning of a potential relationship with that agent, right? If your buyer decides to write an offer, You now are going into a business relationship with that listing agent as a buyer's agent. And how you set the tone of that initial showing is potentially going to set the tone for the entire transaction right through to closing. So if you're respectful, you're detail oriented, you show up when you say you're going to show up, you present a prepared offer to a listing agent,
Very important.
they see that you've got the skills and the knowledge, we end up knowing who those people are. We end up knowing who the agents are that we wish we could work with all the time.
That's right.
And we know the ones that we wish we didn't have to work with all the time.
Also true.
And we all know who they are. And it's, wow, I really had a great transaction with that agent. And when they're the ones that are the listing agent of a property you're showing, you say, wow, this is great. I hope we can work on this together. So you start to learn who those people are that you want to have a good relationship with and who you want to collaborate with, and those who you don't.
That's important. It's so important.
And so be that realtor that other realtors want to work with.
And then the last thing that I've noticed is good agents, they participate in the wider real estate community. And I've just seen it. We were just at an event, Hoopla, down in Killington. And, I looked around the room and I said to myself, I guarantee you every agent here is finding some sort of success. I don't think it's a coincidence that those that show up for events, association meetings, participate, you're on the committees board for
I'm
VA.
on the forums committee for VAR, and I'm on the VAR board of directors, Vermont Association of Realtors board of directors.
And so I don't think that's a coincidence that you're also involved. Why do you think that is?
I've been involved almost since the beginning. On the local board, a couple years in, someone said, I'd really love for you to be a director. And I was so honored that they asked me. And I think I've served some kind of role every year since then. And it's important to give back to the community that you work in. For me, I like to have the knowledge of what's coming. I like to be prepared to bring information back to this company as a principal broker if there's changes coming along. If I'm part of those changes, if I'm in the meetings that are making changes to come, then I prefer to be on that end of it and get out ahead of it versus finding out about it after like everybody else does. I think it's a combination of giving your time to your community and having those agents there know that you're giving your time to the community. There's some networking to be had there and referral business when you're in this family of realtors and you need some help with a customer outside of your market area. There's some great opportunities there to refer business and to just be more prepared and have the knowledge ahead of other realtors who aren't involved and engaged and who are just sitting back waiting for information to come to them. There is definitely a correlation between the successful realtors and the realtors that are involved in their organization, involved in their community events, involved with their lenders, involved with their local businesses, that are making themselves known to everyone that this is what they do. That's part of marketing yourself. And it's part of being a successful realtor. You have to be able to do those things, even for those who it's uncomfortable for. But
it's part of it.
Yeah, it is part of it. And volunteerism is important in any industry. And This is my volunteerism. This is how, you don't get paid for going to a VAR convention, but it's knowledge and you're bringing it back to your company and sharing, hoping that you're always learning something new and staying on top of industry changes.
And you're also bringing that to your clients. So I have, as my last question, this is the most important, because it's your birthday. I think, you're doing a podcast on your birthday.
It's awesome. It's the best. I'm so excited to do this. We celebrated yesterday because it was Sunday. And I had a fantastic bike event and all my friends were there. And we had a beautiful bike ride. And then we had a nice lunch after. And I couldn't imagine a better way to spend the day.
Because you're an avid biker, correct?
I like to bike. Yes.
Do you think you have another passion, another thing that you love? And so is that where the biking comes in?
That's part of it. Yeah. I'm pretty active. So biking and skiing and being outdoors is really important to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, I want to say thank you so much for coming in on your birthday. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.